Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common-sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. This is a first of a two-part series looking at the life and times of the band Celtic Frost. Now, you may have heard them, I'm sure you have heard them, or you have heard of them. Those that are new to heavy metal may not have done. Those that, of course, have been around the blocks a bit, like myself and a lot of you, will know exactly who they are. They might not know the full story behind this very influential and interesting band. The reason I decided to do a two-part is that looking at the history of the band, firstly, I didn't want to rush it, but secondly, it's quite a crazy and sad story in the long run for this band, for such an influential and amazing band. So the first part, I will be going over a very potted history. I may get things right, I may get things wrong. I'm only going by the sources that I can find. And then we're going to cover just a quick chat about the first three albums. And then we're going to have a break in between with a next week's episode is going to be the Metal Ruse Tapes Volume 2. And then following week after that, there will be the part 2 of this chat. Now, I will be recording part 2 before then. So if you wish to hear both parts back to back, please do go on to Patreon for $2 a month. You can get extras, videos, and ad-free, and this one will go up. It will go up, the second part will go up exactly the same time next week as this one usually goes up. But it will be in conjunction with the Metal Ruse tapes, so you get a double whammy next week. Anyway, so Celtic Frost. Why did I choose Celtic Frost? Well, as it's getting colder and the nights are drawing in, I have discussed this before on the show before when I was talking about the Doom band Celtic Candlemass. I think it's time for us to knuckle down and listen to some of that sort of heavier, doomier, darker music, as I like to feel. Also, as I've mentioned this before, Celtic Frost is my go-to music to listen to when I'm putting up Christmas decorations in hot summer here in Australia, because I find the irony is delicious. Very delicious. And I've talked about that before on the show. The band itself is from Switzerland, Zurich to be precise, and they've been around in some form or another since the very early 80s. The actual band itself, Celtic Frost, its active years were 1984 to 87, 88 to 93, and then a big gap of 2001 to 2008. Now, we're going to talk about the band that predated Celtic Frost first, which is Hellhammer. Then we'll move on to the band itself, which is, they are, without using too much hyperbole, along with Venom and Bathory and bands like that, they are the core creators, innovators of black metal, and really, I think this band invented death metal as well. Now, there'll be people that tell you differently. I feel that way when I listen to the albums, and I looked at a lot of information researching this program, and that came across that way. It did. Okay, so the main protagonists in this band, up until a certain point, there's two main protagonists. Okay, you have Thomas Gabriel Foster, who's also known as Warrior, or Tom Warrior, or Satanic Slaughter. Take your pick. I think he goes by Tom Warrior now. And then Martin Eric Ain, A-I-N. His original real name is Martin Eric Strickle. Sadly, he passed away age 50 in 2017 from a heart attack. That's really sad for him, for the world, for his family, and for music. So, but we'll look at his wonderful catalogue up to that point. Anyway, right. So they're the two main protagonists, and they formed a band called Hellhammer. It was released, and they had one album. They had one album, one EP. But the album itself is Apocalyptic Raids. Fantastic album. It is DIY metal at its very best, I believe. You have to remember the time this was being made. This is 81, okay, Hellhammer. And so, the world is music industry has been shaken by its very core and foundation for the last 3/4 years with the punk movement and the DIY ethic of anyone can do it. And then, of course, the new wave of British heavy metal, which fell into line with the same concept that anyone can do it. So the boys originally played this, this band, Hellhammer. And originally the bass player was not Martin Ain, was someone else. He left, Martin joined. They then joined, they got a bit of worldwide fame, if you know what I mean, for as much as you can be then, through tape changing and word of mouth. And because of that, the label Noise, which is a German label, which is well known throughout the metal community, particularly in the early 80s, they released the album Apocalyptic Raids in March of 1984. Now, it's quite a cavernous, cold, raucous sound, right? The imagery that they're using here on this, it's not all traditional metal by any means. It's quite niche and quite punky in its sound, because they're using very lo-fi sounds and technologies. There's only 3 of them in the band at the time. They're not making they're not using synths and expensive production values. This is metal on a budget, exactly the same way that Noise released Venom's albums, in exactly the same kind of way, that kind of clatter and splatter. I mean, bands like Hellhammer had been listening to Venom, I'm absolutely sure. The band itself, though, was a bit of a millstone around the neck of Thomas and of Michael. Now, if you don't know what a millstone around the neck means in America and other places, it means like a weight on their backs, on their shoulders. It was a thing that they not regret, but lingered with them for a very long time. It was people in the industry did not seem to take to it very kindly. He often says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that and this is a paraphrase from Tom Warrior. He says that back in the day, in 84, 85, when they were recording Morbid Tales, it was a curse. Hammer stayed as a curse, but it was Hellhammer that really made him think in the direction they want to go and why they went direction of Celtic Frost in the end. Right? But there were some really horrible, horrible things said in the press, which, you know, you're going to get with all music, aren't you? You're going to get your lovers and your haters everywhere you go. But unfortunately, back then, it was more... Whereas people look at the internet and go, it's just the internet. Now, back then, the written word was really, really powerful, and it did follow you around. Rock Power, which was a music paper back then, said that it was the most terrible, abhorrent, and atrocious music that had ever been allowed to be recorded. That was just a small example of the things that were said. What a horrible thing to say, really, about a band that's trying to do their best. Let's be honest, there would have been worse hardcore punk bands around that particular time, you know. It was, yeah, as I said, Tom often says that this was the worst thing that he could have done for his career, and he feels that it lingered with him for many, many years afterwards, and to some extent still lingers with him now. Which I think, you know, it's a shame, a real shame, you know. It was only a moment in time, you know, and I think anyone being creative and doing something different often rocks the boat and pushes buttons and annoys people because they want status quo, don't they? And I don't mean another song, bump, bump, another song. I don't mean that status quo, although I do love status quo. No, I mean, you know, the status quo. They don't like things to change too much. You know, and another issue they had, which I feel, again, was a sad thing, is there was a metal magazine called Metal Forces that I used to read, and it was active between 83 and 92. They loathed the group, sparking a long-term feud between the magazine and Tom Warrior, which stopped the band from playing in the UK for many years. You know, that alone, does that not, you know... Now, you could say, Tom, you're being petty. You could say it's only one other person's views. But when you pour your heart and soul into something, and as different and as creatively different as Hellhammer was, so everything else around you at the time, it can be quite painful for you, I can imagine. So, you know, we in the UK missed out on seeing classic Celtic Frost lineup and classic albums being played at their power and their peak due to this one twit. I'm going to say twit. I wanted to say twat, but no, we've said it now. He's a twat. I won't mention the name who wrote that article. You can find it. It's not for me to badmouth a particular person at the same time, because I wasn't there in his mind when he reviewed it. But it did seem to cause a bias which helped almost destroy his dreams and their future going forward. So, you know, really, really, really not a good forward step. You think to yourself right now, wow, okay, this isn't being good. Where do we go from here? Now, I'll just quick side note. I came into the path of Celtic Frost when I was 17, 18. And I used to know this guy called Crazy Mark. I talked to him about before on the show. We'll talk, you know, the quick potty history of him. He was about 10 years old, maybe 5 or 6. Yeah, no, he was 10 years older than me. And he had a huge Kiss collection. He was a massive Kiss fan. He was nutter. He drank a lot. He was really into extreme metal when no one else seemed to be. I'd go around to his place and listen to, you know, early demos of Metallica. He'd put Metallica on, and he'd sort of sit there and praise them. This is before the Black Album, of course. And he also put on the really extreme stuff like Venom, which I loved anyway. And he put on Celtic Frost because he said, "You like Venom? Listen to this." And we'd sit there listening to the first album, which we're going to talk about soon, Morbid Tales. I didn't listen to any Hellhammer until much, much later because I couldn't get hold of it. I'd read about it, I knew about it, but this is pre-internet, and it was very difficult to get on vinyl, and the CDs were even harder to get hold of at the time. I don't think he had any Hellhammer that I know of. Anyway, that's how I came into it. So, Morbid Tales. This is the first and wonderful incantation of Celtic Frost. 1984. Okay, it was when it was recorded when they embarked on a short tour of Germany and Austria, which was followed by an EP. So before Morbid Tales, this is where I come in, there was an EP called Emperor's Return. Okay, now it was packaged along later with a CD in America and in the UK and in all lots of it was repackaged with Morbid Tales later on. They introduced a new American drummer called Reed Cruikshanks, aka Reed St. Mark, who would stay with them for some time after that. It's a really tasty little EP. In fact, I have it and I love it. It's a nice jump between the clattering chaos and cold stark madness of Hellhammer's first album and EP to Celtic Frost's first album, Morbid Tales. So The Emperor's Return, sorry. It's got a wonderful cover. The artwork is done by a called Tom. It was produced by Tom W. Marta, and it was the artwork itself was by Philip Lawrence Lavery. Philip Lavery. Oh my God! I'm recording this in the morning, guys. Usually I record this in the afternoon, and before I go to work, I'm recording this, and my brain went somewhere else. Philip Lavery is the art. Now he does all the art for Creator and stuff like that, so you'll know the art when you see it. It's got a sort of beautiful, sort of heavy metal magazine artwork with these busty maidens, warrior queens in metal brassiers, and this sort of theme, and it's like a real early airbrush, but very sumptuous in its tones and textures. I absolutely love it. And it was recorded. As I said, in an old-fashioned way, in the studio in Switzerland and Germany, and it has artwork on it. So this is the first time where the true sort of black and white extreme photographs with all when you see the photographs, the band photographs on this EP, you'll see the DNA of all those things that come after them, all those sort of black and white DIY sort of spiked gloves and blackness that you get with a lot of the later stuff. It's really old-fashioned in its sound now, but back then it was really quite forward and innovative, right? It's quite for me, it's really an interesting EP, a nice segue into the first album, which is Morbid Tales. So when I said 1984 before earlier, guys, I didn't mean that. What I mean is that the band reformed and became Celtic Frost in 84. 85 is when Emperor's Return comes out. It was recorded in 1984 in Germany and then also in Switzerland. It's 21 minutes and 21 seconds long, and it has quite a few tracks on it. Circle of the Tyrants, Morbid Tales, which is where the album I think comes from. Forward after that, Dethroned Emperor, and we've also got Visual Aggression and Suicidal Winds. It's really thrash in its early forms here. There's a real thrashness to it, a real death metal oeuvre, but more thrash than anything else, I think, here. But then people say to me, I don't hear the thrash in it. And look, I don't think I do. I just think I sort of hear the DNAs of thrash in there. I'm not a thrash album. I mean, someone said to me, pointed out to me the other day, that kindly pointed out that when I mentioned that Metal Church was a thrash album, they said they're not a thrash band. I feel they are. This is all interpretive, of course. All right. So this happens. This is a brilliant segue into the first amazing album. Now, I said it was only 3 albums I was going to do today, but this is 3 albums plus this EP. So, give it a go, give it a listen. It's easily accessible. You can buy it on, as I said, prepackaged with Morbid Tales that happened in 1999. You can get that. I personally have the reissued vinyl copy that came out a couple of years ago, which is really, really nice. But this is a good way of dipping your toes into the world of Celtic Frost to see where it's coming from, because they don't quite hit their strides, in my opinion. Because at the moment, with this one, it still sounds a little like Hellhammer. There's a little Hellhammer-ish-ness to it. But then we get into Morbid Tales. Now, we'll chat about that on the other side, because you're going to want to hear about this amazing first album. Groundbreaking in all sorts of ways, and very interesting in its story. We'll chat after the break. Bye for now.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common-sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Now at Verizon, we're locking in low prices for 3 years guaranteed on my plan. And you can get a single line for just $45 a month when you switch and bring your phone. That's our best price ever on unlimited welcome with autopay plus taxes and fees, guaranteed for 3 years. Because at Verizon, we got you. Visit your local DC Verizon store today. $20 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G and 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate. Additional terms and conditions apply.
Here we go. It's part 2 of the wonderful Celtic Frost, and a sort of quick dive, accurate or inaccurate, whichever you want to look at it, as accurate as I can make it. In theory, you could probably spend hours chatting about this brilliant band and its wild ride through rock and roll. But this first is their first album. Now, it was originally released as a mini album, a mini LP, a 6-track mini LP in Europe. But then it was taken up in America and they added 2 more tracks to it. The band now consider that the American release, according to Tom Warrior, is the one that they consider as their album. I like both versions. I have both versions. I think it's interesting to listen to it as it flows with the 6-track EP, and then go and listen to the American track of it. It was released in Europe on Noise, because that's who they were signed to with Hellhammer. and then they were also in the US on Enigma/Metal Blade. They had to, as I said, added 2 more tracks to add to the length. The original length of the album was it's sort of rather short, and I think that the reason that they wanted to add length in America was just add value to the package. So the original length is 24 minutes and 51. The LP length is 32 minutes 09. There is also a 1999 CD release of 50 minutes 02, which has got a lot of extra stuff on it. I also think that's not a bad look for. Again, on most streaming platforms, that's what you'll get. Now, the lineup is, as I said, Tom Warrior, Martin Ain, and Reed St. Mark, the drummer. So Martin Ain at this point is nice and embedded into the band. Same with Reed St. Mark. There were lots of additional musicians. There was you've got Stephen Priestley on session drums, Horst Muller on vocals. He also produced a lot of the albums, and Oswald Spencer on violin. So there's a lot of textures in the background. As I said here, as soon as I say that to you, you go, "Oh, violin, okay," because what Celtic Frost are known for are their cold orchestral mixtures and their motifs. There's a lot of very beautiful underlining classical motifs in their music. A lot of people don't hear that, they just hear an extreme. Now, by no means is this kind of extreme music that you would now hear, where the vocals are inaudible and it's just noise, which I also love, but is not. It's where it's gone. With this early form of extreme music, like Venom, the vocals were understandable. You could hear the lyric, and so it was. It's a little easier to come this way into the extreme scene than going straight into something so dense that you can't make it out. But saying that, I think you should always start here because this is a great way to start. So the album itself, the original mini EP, which again has a lovely cover. It's sort of like it's got the pentagram in red and all the satanic symbols. It's very on point for the genre that it's in. Now, interestingly enough, as well, the band's thematic scenes, the thematic forces behind the band itself are lots to do with yes, Satanism is involved, demonology is there. There's a lot also about humanity and how we look after each other, what we do with each other. Also, there's also lots of, as a typical you'd imagine, there's also lots of fantasy involved here. It's a great heady mix of all sorts of things thrown in. So, first side of this wonderful mini EP is Into the Crypt of Rays, which is a really good opening track for your first foray into Celtic Frost. It has a different sound. I feel it follows on slightly from Hellhammer's album, but it does from Raids, but it feels different at the same time. And then it's Visions of Morality, all right? And that's where that side finished, 2 tracks. See, I love that EP feel. Then you flip it over and you get Procrastination, open brackets, of the Wicked, close brackets, Return of Eve, Dance Macabre, and Nocturnal Fear. So a really good B-side. Really, the tracks themselves, they don't hang around. You're not getting 8-minute, dense and complex pieces of music. You're getting 4-minute tracks. This is remember, as I said, this is the punk pioneers of extreme metal. This is the mixture of punk and metal clashing together. It's what I've said before. How did music become extreme? and I think this is one of the reasons why. Now, the US LP version, or the LP version that the band like to are more proud of, I should say. There's 2 extra tracks thrown in here, okay, and both of these were on the Emperor's the EP before, Dethroned Emperor and Morbid Tales. Now, I don't know if they were re-recorded to go on this album, or they were just taken holus bolus. I couldn't find that information. If anyone out there knows better than me, please tell me. I can imagine that they probably re-recorded it to go on here. We don't know. Anyway, that's a piece of history that we could all find in ourselves out, can't we? So, there you go. You got this album. Out it goes into the world. Makes a massive dent in and an effect into its audience. It absolutely embodies the whole sound that is to come tumbling out of Europe and of America very, very soon after this effect. So they toured this album relentlessly, particularly through Germany and Austria. So, you know, they were giving it a go. I don't think they were making much money on it. I know that for a fact. It's charted, but mainly in retrospect. It didn't chart hugely well in the first throw of its release, but it did get very good. Interestingly, it got very good reviews. The same reviewers that were really nasty and hellish in some respects to Hellhammer were being quite effusive about the latest release from this band, that they were very happy to denigrate themselves, which is very, very interesting, is it not? But here is where it starts to get a little bit tricky for the band. They're building a fantastic following. They've got tracks that will crush you, like Circle of Tyrants and Morbid Tales, Dethroned Emperor, all these amazing Suicidal Winds, all this stuff that's cold, bleak, and beautiful in its recording, still maintaining that speed and ferocity of all their earlier stuff. They then had the chance to make the next album. This is 1985. So they spent, it's like with bands, they do all the work. They will say your first album and your second album are where you've spent your youth writing it, and then in the third album, and technically this is the third album if you considered Hellhammer. I know it's a different sound I said before, but we'll go with the flow, right? Okay, and so this is the third album. Technically it's their second, but they're going and they're creating all this amazing stuff. And so 1985 comes along and they make To Mega Therion. All right. This album doesn't have Martin Ain on bass, but a stand-in Dominic Steiner. Does that detract? No, I don't think so. The sound may be slightly different, but he played live with it. He just didn't record the album itself. The art, we'll start with the cover first, because you'll understand. It's probably one of the most iconic extreme covers in history. Alongside Venom's Black Metal, this is, for me, one of those ones where when you see it, it gives you a little shiver down the spine. It is quite an eerie cover. Again, this is some artwork by a particular artist that has made two, right as I speak. I mean, there's obviously a lot more, but two that I know of that I consider some of the most iconic album covers of them all. He did ELP's Brain Salad Surgery. That's Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I have talked about them in the show before. And this time he did To Mega Therion. This is H.R. Geiger. I have a little side note about H.R. Geiger. As I spoke before, my sister has worked with him. She helped paint some of the sets on Alien and the original movie, and she did bump into him quite a few times. Now, the album, the painting that they use is a painting by a guy called Satan I. Now, Geiger gave the permission to the band to use it through because of a correspondence via mail with Warrior and himself. He was so sort of impressed with them that he gave them permission to use the art. And it is this album itself. So, the describing the art, it's got all the Geiger alien-esque things that you can imagine, but it's also got inverted crosses and Christ on a cross. It is quite an imposing album cover, and I highly recommend getting the album of it because the CD or the tape does not give it justice. The full album cover, holding it in your hands, you know going in before you've even put this on the turntable that you're going to be in for something. All right, it's one of the most iconic albums in the extreme genre. I'm saying that now. I really mean it. It has influenced black metal, death metal, some thrash, the blackened thrash, dark, all that stuff. This is such an important album. I cannot explain it in any other way apart from that. So the album was recorded between the 14th and the 28th of September in 1985 in Berlin and Casablanca. And it's 39 minutes and 52 seconds long. Now, this is brilliant, is it not? Because, again, I've talked about the overness, the overly lengthy of albums that can happen. But these particular albums, they punch you around the face and the thorax and the stomach, they kick you in the ghoulies, and they push you out of your house into the street, into the rain and muck. It's that kind of, it ambushes you before you've even had a chance to take a breath. It is almost over. It was produced by Tom and Horst Müller. As I said, Müller did vocals on the previous album. And the title itself translates to the Great Beast, which is a biblical expression, or it's also the name that was given to Aleister Crowley, the most evil man in the world. It has a very Wagnerian feel to it in this album, but it doesn't fall into the category where sometimes with these Wagnerian type sort of loud operatic kind of pieces, you do get a lot of really high pitched castrato stereotypical vocals. You're not getting that here. He even says it. He sings with a wicked smile. He says, "This is considered by a lot of people as death metal at its very finest." Martin Popoff, the well-known music journalist, considers it to be a black metal landmark and the most consistent death metal album that exists. And I sort of think he's probably right there. It is a cracking, intense album. The tracks go as you have Innocence of Wrath, The Usurper, to some of the best death metal track ever written. This is considered The Usurper. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, it is a real. It's like you can almost feel the birth of the genre just there. Then you have Jewel Throne, Dawn of Megiddo, and Eternal Summer. That's side A. What a beginning! What an opening! It's raucous. It's stark. It has lots of texture. It's fast. It's aggressive. It's really enjoyable as a ride as albums go. It's a real. I didn't think you could top Morbid Tales. I think that's going to be hard. But then you come onto this album and you go, oh, I see. I think this is their band at their pinnacle. But wait, there is a lot more beyond this. But side B, you have Circle of Tyrants. And then you have North Winds, or open brackets Beyond the, close brackets North Wind. Fated Eyes, Tears in a Prophet's Dream, and Necromantal Screams. Already it's writing itself into the history books with titles like that. It sits at 39 minutes and 52 seconds long. It's again not holding too much attention. It's not keeping you at bay and going, oh my god, where's this going to end? Or I've got to go to work now. I really want to keep here the rest of this, or whatever. It grabs you, yes, but it also it speeds through. Now the lineup is Tom G. Warrior, as always, on guitar, vocals, and effects. Dominic Steiner on bass, and the ever-present Reed St. Mark on drums. Here it's a band at its very peak. It's a pinnacle of both black metal and death metal of that era. There are albums now that will come out that will feel different, sound different, be your favourites, but there are very few that are as important as to Mega Therion is to the genre itself. It's a thicker mix. It's quite low driven, and the drums are very. There's some wonderful drumming on it. The only downside I'll say to this is the mix is a bit muddy in some respects. Sometimes you can hear the double bass going. It's quite. You want to hear a bit more of it. It feels mixed low, and the vocals feel mixed a little bit off as well sometimes. But I'm being very picky here. As a huge fan of this album, I'm just trying to find something that, some things that they could have done better, and I think the mix could have been it. It's full of the chaos, though, of the previous album and of all their work before. It has, that sort of sense of urgency, but also of a doom-laden sludginess as well in some parts to it. The guitar, it's not a screeching guitar-ridden pyrotechnic album. This is a stripped-back sound. This is a sound of a band that is doing what punk did to progressive rock. It's what new wave of British heavy metal did to pop music. It's basically changing direction, taking some of that DNA and moving forward. And this is this and the next album is the peak. Is an album, a band at its very, very, very best, and an album where a band knows where it's going. But at this moment in their career, it is a cracking album. It's available reissued on CD. I'm sure it's on DVD. It's on streaming. You can get physical copies of it now, reissued. The original copies are a little bit tricky to get hold of. They are out there though, because as I said, it was released on several labels in the UK, in Europe, and in the US. Again on Noise, and again on Metal Blade. It's just wonderful. I'm going to put in the show notes some artwork, so you can see the artwork for a link to the artwork for to Mega Therion, just so you can get a feel of how sinister and different it was to anything else out there at the time. If you think about what was being released in that year of 85, right? There was Maiden, there's Priest, there's it all where all the album covers are not that challenging to you. It feels like a frontier album, a frontier band, challenging and pushing the concepts lyrically, musically, and conceptually to its very peak. And then we get the wonderful and very misunderstood third album, okay, which is sadly to say for me one of those albums that I struggled originally to get into, but then once I let myself think of it as an extreme kind of concept album, an extreme form of prog, it really opened up like a very fine wine or a great whiskey. It is actually, when I think about it, quite progressive and probably one of the very, very, very early progressive metal, extreme progressive albums of all of them. This is Into the Pandemonium. Now, those that don't know what pandemonium is, the definition of pandemonium is actually it's the capital of hell in Paradise Lost. It's the capital of hell. So where all of the demons and devils reside. It was released on the 1st of June 1987 on Noise in Europe and on Combat Records in the US, so slightly different. Martin is back on in the studio on bass here, and it was recorded in between January and April 1987 in Hanover. Only one single. The band only ever released one single, and this is the single off it, I Won't Dance. Here is where the interesting stuff happens. It's very experimental for the band at a forefront of a changing and a new frontier. It's got a cover on it, which was quite questionable at the time. All right, the opening track of the album, the band was Wall of Voodoo, and the track's Mexican Radio. All right, a real interesting choice because the band itself, which is Wall of Voodoo, is a new wave band. Now, what I haven't mentioned yet is that Tom Warrior and Michael are big new wave punk fans. Now, it comes through in their music. I didn't mention it before because I wanted you to find that out in this album. So they're really into bands and into goth bands, and you can really hear this. It's sort of in the background of some of their earlier albums. And now I've mentioned it, you're going to know. Go back and listen to bands like Susan the Banshees, Bauhaus, Sex Gang Children. Sort of these sort of industrial goth bands that were really big in the early 80s in the new wave scene. Because again, the new wave was breaking barriers and changing sounds and doing different things, which obviously Tom and Mike and Ain are really open to that kind of thing. Bands like like Sisters of Mercy, and one of the big ones is Christian Death. Interesting, I was only talking about that band with a colleague of mine the other day, but his vocals on this album are very much akin to the vocals on Christian Death. And of course, then this album itself, it influences bands on top of that, like Paradise Lost. All right. In fact, George McIntosh said, he much later said that Roz Williams' vocal of Christian Death is almost intertwined with the vocals by Tom on this album. So now we know there's a gothic sense. There's a true punk feel. We now know by this album this is the case. Now you might say, hey, but you scooted over the Wall of Voodoo's Mexican Radio. The band itself, Wall of Voodoo, is really interesting because their lead singer and guitarist is Stan Ridgway. Now Stan Ridgway released a single back in the 80s that I absolutely love so much that I had to go out at the very next day, as soon as shops opened, beg, borrowed and stole, I didn't steal, but begged and borrowed money from my older brother to go and buy the 12-inch of a track called Camouflage by Stan Ridgway. It's one of my most memorable moments at buying music when I was young, and I absolutely love the lyric. It's not metal, by no means is it punk, it's quite pop, but it has because it's about the Vietnam War, it has a sort of that sense of what was coming out then. We had Hard Castles at 19, and then this came out. There was a lot of rethought about Vietnam. Anyway, side note. So you can see why an extreme band would dabble with putting things like this in it. Now, the band itself was around from 77 to 89. That's the Wall of Voodoos. Okay. It still had its orchestral flourishes and its true Celtic Frost parts to it, but it had an industrial blend that comes into this, a much more tenacious and forward-looking. It was openly liked by the critics when it first came out. It was actually one of their most popular albums that they ever released. It was also, unfortunately, it was a last on the Noise label because there was a costly battle that went between the band and the label. The band said that the label sabotaged the album's promotions, and unfortunately, it probably may have done, because there was a bit of spitefulness going on. Its original working title was Silent Excess, which I quite like. Now, there was a problem with the boss of Noise. His name was Carl, I'm going to get this wrong, Ulrich Walterbach, who did not like the direction that the band was going in. He wanted to go more thrash, as thrash was really big at the moment. You know, at that time, Slayer and Metallica and Megadeth were all over the radio, selling shitloads of records, and so they wanted them to do that. Now, of course, the band wanted to do what they want to do. So, again, here goes the sabotage. Really sad. I'm glad that the band did not let that deter them in what they were doing with this project. You know, they knew where they were going and they stuck to their guns. He threatened to defund them if they carried on with the direction they were going to. But it got worse. At the headquarters of SPV, which is the printing firm of the label, they had a listening party, and the said owner of the record label openly and into the entire room said, "Why aren't you doing more like Exodus or Slayer or Metallica? Why are you not being more like them?" In front of everyone at the listening party of their new album. That's like saying someone's baby comes out, you look at them and say, "Christ, that's ugly." You might think it, but you don't say it, right? Really, really sad, I feel. And so it really sort of put a sour taste in the name in their mouths, I think, for quite some time, you know. And you know, they said at the time, "What are rules? Why are we having rules? What's all this rules that we have to put on music?" I'm going to paraphrase again here. It says, "We hate to the unwritten rules and limitations in the metal scene, often cited as avant-garde, fusing desperate tones like disco and the same kind of beats that disco has." This is a paraphrase from Tom Warrior. Both Warrior and Ain are post-punk devotees, as I said, so they want to try. If you listen to the post-punk albums, and I really love them, some of the bands like Gang of Four, Killing Joke are punk and post-punk. You know, some of that industrial, interesting sounds. Bands like Alien Sex Fiend, all that sort of thing. They're adding and doing all this strange, the Violent Prunes and things like that. They're really interesting textures they're putting in their music that they want to bring to their album, their third album, okay, or / second album, I suppose. It is definitely a third album. Sorry, what am I talking about? It's their third album, Tony. Too early in the morning. It courted controversy. Why would it not? When they released the album, people were saying things like, you know, this is an unusual textured album. I don't know what's going on. But it did become, as I said, their biggest selling album. The single that was released sort of, again, courted controversy because it was firstly a single the band wasn't releasing singles. Secondly, they were sampling NASA radio broadcasts between the Apollo program and NASA itself, which enraged a lot of their fans and their peers at the time. They were like, why are you putting in sampling? Now it's something that, like a band I absolutely love, a Canberra band, Project Ultimate Satan, do really, really well. It's something that is, in the long run, wonderful, but in the short term, a difficult and dangerous move to make, because it could have killed their career dead cold. It did not. It kept them at their very peak at this point. The themes that rise in this album are like ancient civilizations, pandemonium itself, Babylon falling. There's a lot of ancient themes coming here. Babylonia, Nebuchadnezzar, Marduk, all these wonderful ancient pre-Christian characters and religions. A lot is it's very intelligent in its outlook. I mean, the I Would Dance is actually taken or about the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's also a 19th century poet. It's also inspiration for a lot of the tracks on the album, and they use poems lifted from very, Charles Baudelaire, right? Le Frère du Mal, Sorrows of the Moon is the English translation. And interestingly enough, a lot of people, like the lead singer of Paradise Lost, said that he came across Baudelaire because of this album. And I only know Baudelaire because, and I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, because of Monty Python, to be honest. And the lead singer of Moonspell also said that he was, Fernando Ribera, said that he also discovered Baudelaire through this album. So it's intellectual at the same time as being a musical mindfuck. It is a fantastic album. It's so progressive, so different, so daring. The art itself is the right panel of hell from the Garden of Eden by the 14th century painter Hieronymus Bosch, painted in 1504. And it helps that album, when you look at the album cover, like the previous album, it has a real sense of, a real sense of what you're getting from it. It's thick, it's dense, it's like the cover of Ancient Dreams by Candlemass I mentioned last week. Now, interestingly, when they went on to tour with this album, they were, went on touring with the back of Anthrax as a support band. And Anthrax, only a few months previous to touring with them, were doing 500-seaters. And then overnight almost, they were doing 7,000 and 8,000 seaters. So it really benefited the band. It gave them a massive window of which to push their sound. This album, and Malcolm Dome, God rest his soul, dear old Malcolm Dome, a friend of my mate's Mel, lived up the road to Mel, but he went to school with him. He knows him, we knew him quite well. Said it was the most visionary avant-garde masterpiece and of extreme metal, and I think that avant-garde is such a good way of describing it. I think it also inspires gothic metal. It inspires symphonic metal in great swathes here. It really does make you think in a more, I don't know, it makes you think in a different way to the extreme scene that you would expect, right? Okay, the tracks are Mexican Radio, Mesmerized, Inner Sanctum, Sorrows of the Ain Moon, Babylon Fell, that's side A. And on side 2, you have Caress into Oblivion, One in Their Pride, I Want to Dance, the single, Rex ERA, open brackets, Requiem, close brackets, and last but not least, Oriental Masquerade. It has violas, violins, cellos, French horn. It's got it all. It is very much like Venom's At War with Satan. I think that is possibly one of the very first extreme progressive albums of them all, and I think this baby sits along with it. Musically, it's better produced. It's a better production. It has a better sound. The textures that Tom and Martin have put into it, they don't regret it. They may say that they probably wish they hadn't done. I mean, there have been some sort of mumblings from Tom saying that maybe it was a step too far. Maybe it wasn't right at the time. They were only very new into the sound. But why not? Why not integrate your love of all things? All great art is integrated, is it not? Art is about the mixture of things you love, things you've learned to love, things you found, and things that you understand or even sometimes don't understand. So this is a brilliant way to finish the first part of the journey of this amazing band, Celtic Frost. Now, part 2, as I said, comes out soon. It will be out next week, with the coexisting with the next Metal Ruse Volume 2 mixtapes. But for Patreon listeners, you can listen to that for $2 a month. I will put the show notes. I will put the link to it in the show notes. It will be there for you to listen to, so you can hear it next week instead of waiting a whole 2 weeks to hear it. So, go listen to those albums. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to know that if you are already a fan, have you learned something new? Did I miss something out? Possibly A, definitely B. It's a lot to take in a short time. And if I've missed something, I apologize to you hardcore fans. Anyway, bye for now. Keep safe. Keep loving that extreme metal. Enjoy it. Keep warm if you're in a warm part of the world. Keep cool if you're in a hot part of the world. And as I said, keep rocking. But do go. Like and subscribe. Thumbs up. Stars. You know the drill, people. Talk to you next week. Bye for now.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.